And welcome back. Here is the second part of our special two-part episode for the top 10 movies of 2019. Here we go on our numbers 5 through 1. All right, Alex, what's your number 5?
So number 5, all right, halfway through. It's the band Ithaca with their album The Language of Injury. This is a female-fronted metalcore, mathcore album. I'm generally not too much of a fan of metalcore. I used to be a little bit more into it when I was younger and like in high school, kind of getting into like Under Oath and whatnot, and As I Lay Dying. But as I got older, I got more into more of the extreme side of metal, I guess, and kind of left metalcore in the dust. But kind of coming back to the genre and with the added bonus of getting some mathcore and like post-hardcore and stuff like that in there, this one stuck with me. This is another one where this is their band's first full-length album. They've got a couple EPs, but this is their first full-length, and kind of like Psalm, they just hit it. It's great. It's aggressive. It's really heavy. It kind of, with the mathcore element, it's really kind of a bit manic and all over the place and a bit crazy, but never to the point where it just completely loses you. It's just a really solid opening album for the band. I think this was released on the Holy Roar record label, which I'm getting into a little bit over this year after kind of checking out this album. And with it being female fronted, it's kind of something different than a lot of other metalcore bands, which are primarily just entirely, have just all male members. So not only to have a female in the band, but to have her do the vocals is something pretty cool. And yeah, she's incredible, like just awesome. Yeah, the vocals are really good. The guitar is amazing. You got a bunch of riffs that work really well. So yeah, this is another, if you want something a little bit more aggressive and a little more in your face, as far as metal goes, this is a good option to go with.
Yeah, I can't say I've dabbled too much in metal, but this does sound like one that if I were to look into it, I would check it out.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, it's really good. Maybe not the best intro to metalcore specifically. I think there are probably other bands that have done it better, but this was really good. Yeah, I'd say, yeah, if you want to check it out, why not? The cover isn't unfortunately too great. I don't really care for the cover very much, but if you can look past that and get into the actual music, you'll like it, maybe.
I'm surprised you actually don't like the cover. It looks very homage to a lot of like Vertigo from Alfred Hitchcock. You got a wonderful pink blade right there, some nice cut-ups of looks like, the female band members in the back there. I think there's something very poetic about that.
Yeah, I mean, it's not a bad album cover by any means. It's just, I don't know, even like looking over like my top 10 list, it's probably the one I like the least. But homage to Alfred Hitchcock stuff aside, it's okay. It's all right.
All right, Nate. So what is your number 5?
My number 5 is Todd Phillips's Joker. So, the internet and everybody else out there has praised the wahoozles out of this movie. Joaquin Phoenix is going to win every award. We get that. This is the reason why I like this. This is a different endeavor from DC on what they're trying to do here. It's not completely canon with what we've seen in DC Comics and who are DC fans and familiar with the Joker's background. It's doing something different, innovative, jarring, and I love it for what it's doing. When I first saw it, I could see all the references to, a lot of these 70s movies like The King of Comedy, Network, Taxi Driver kind of being ran through this. But there is an interesting narrative at play, and what it's trying to evoke empathy for this character, Arthur Flick, who Joaquin Phoenix does a stellar job of creating one of the most disturbing and most challenging performances I've ever seen on the screen. And seriously, I think what Todd Phillips is doing here is not creating a character that you like or are rooting for, or a character that you completely hate, but just an experience of what it's like to live in this guy's world and just what would drive him to this kind of break.
Everybody just yells and screams at each other. Nobody's civil anymore. Nobody thinks what it's like to be the other guy. You think men like Thomas Wayne ever think what it's like to be someone like me? To be somebody but themselves? They don't. They think that we'll just sit there and take it like good little boys, that we won't werewolf and go wild.
You finished? I mean, there's so much self-pity, Arthur. You sound like you're making excuses for killing those young men. Not everybody, and I'll tell you this, not everyone is awful.
You're awful,
Me? I'm awful? Oh yeah, how am I awful?
playing my video, inviting me on the show. You just wanted to make fun of me.
It was
Just
one
like
of
the
those
rest of
movies
them.
where from
You're
beginning
a
to end,
pussy.
you felt tension. And it's just, I like this kind of stuff. When DC does this kind of stuff, it just shows that it doesn't have to follow like this cookie cutter, superhero genre, especially if it's tackling a villain. This kind of one-off endeavor just makes it something completely, on its own. And I don't know, I'm kind of excited. When I saw this movie, I think if anything, there's stuff about this that I can see the problems with it, but I like just how confident and how it just owns this perspective. I loved the performances. I loved the directing of this was great as well. And I don't know, it was just my number 5.
Awesome. So moving on, my number 5 is Crawl.
The state of Florida has issued a Category 5 hurricane warning. All residents must evacuate immediately. Grab your families, your loved ones, and get out.
Dad!
We won't be able to come for you.
Dad!
Directed by Alexandra Aja. When a huge hurricane hits her hometown in Florida, Haley ignores evacuation orders to look for her father. After finding him badly wounded, both are trapped by the flood. With virtually no time to escape the storm, they discover that rising water levels are the least of their problems.
It's a big crocodile.
It's
Really?
a big-ass crocodile.
This one?
This is the one.
I was wondering when someone was going to comment about what the hell is this doing on your list, Joe.
I was like, Crawl. I was like, no.
Yes.
We already know
Yeah,
Joe. He loves schlocky B-rated movies shot on an A movie scale. We did an entire podcast on this.
And this fits the bill.
I mean, I can't say that I'm surprised, I guess, but
As far as good old-fashioned B-movie creature feature fun, it doesn't get much better than this, guys.
I know. I've actually heard quite a lot of good things about this movie. Like, it does fit the bill very well, and it takes it to an extra notch.
It's not like some deep, thoughtful movie. It's not some big character piece. It's a movie about someone trapped in a basement, and there are killer crocodiles out there. The crocodiles are freaking monsters in this movie. This is a monster flick. This is a creature feature, and as
Yeah.
far as that goes, I don't feel like we get something like this all that often. We get lots of movies that try to be this. But this is one of the few genuine articles, like this movie is just pure unadulterated B movie goodness, but shot on the A movie level with good actors, good tension, good set design, good writing. It's a movie executed exactly as it should be, very well. And there is no sense of humor about it. It is frightening. It is tense. It is fun.
Mm-hmm. No, I think what just makes this work is because it is a very basic story of them just trapped during a monsoon hurricane, and there's crocodiles, and they got to get out to safety or to drier land. And yeah, it's just those stakes.
I appreciate a movie that executes a simple premise extremely well. And that's what this movie does. It zeroes in on what it's good at, and it says, all right, here is the story. This is the premise. What can we do in this sandbox of a premise? And let's just do that to the best of our abilities. And that is what this movie does. So kudos to them for making a fantastic little piece of B-movie entertainment that's just done well.
Yeah, it warms your heart, Joe. that someone would do this just for you.
It does. And I'm also thankful that the movie finally came out because I was sick and tired of seeing this damn trailer before every single movie for like an entire year.
Yeah.
There was a lot of advertisement for this for a long time.
They advertised the hell out of this movie. I got sick of it. In the theaters, I want nothing more than for the trailer to be over because I've seen it so many times.
And probably for a lot of other folks, they're like, man, okay, if I see this trailer again, I'm just going to go see the movie if it means that much, internet.
Anyway, that is my number 5. No apologies, no regrets.
All right, fair.
All right, Alex, what's your number 4?
All right, so number 4, we got Cairn by Mizmor. This is a doom, sludge, drone, black metal album. Blends them all together. It's slow, it's plotting, it's heavy. It's somewhat like the artist's previous album, Yod. It's YODH, so I don't know how you're gonna throw that H in there, but it's like their previous album, which I absolutely loved. It was one of my favorites of the year. Actually makes it into my like top 50 albums of the decade. But this one is a little slower. It's a little more plotting than Yod was. But as I've gotten it more into kind of like slower metal, specifically like funeral doom metal, this one works well for me. Going back to what I was saying, talking about like atmospheric black metal stuff, I do like albums that really can create a heavy, thorough atmosphere throughout the album, which this one does. It deals a lot with it's a one-man project, and it deals a lot with the artist trying to make something and find his way in life after leaving his faith, and trying to kind of find meaning and find purpose in the world. And I think that's a really great and interesting topic to really fully explore. The genres that he uses, I think, work really well with it. So yeah, this is a heavy album. This is not one that's really easy to break into. I recommended it to another friend of mine, and this was out of like a long list of metal albums from this year, and this one was the one that he was like, yeah, it's just too slow for me. So if you do have the patience to sit through it, it does clock in at just under an hour long with 4 tracks. But I think it's a rewarding album to kind of really get through and to be able to sit with and really just let it kind of overtake you as you really get pulled into and like crushed by the atmosphere of the album and just how heavy it is, both in musically and thematically.
So you definitely recommend this for those who like a feel-good movie, huh?
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, get your Starbucks coffee, just pump some Mizmor on and just go at it.
If your favorite movie is Pixar, you'll love this.
Oh, yeah.
I hate you guys.
That's what you get for having Crawl on your top 10 list.
Yeah.
That's what you get. All right, Nate, what's your number 4?
Oh, my number 4 is the 9th film from the wonderful Tarantino, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. I think I've said this before. This is probably one of the best of Tarantino's films of his career, and it is the least like of Tarantino in style. But the thing is about this is that I think a lot of people go in expecting, what we've been used to seeing with Tarantino, which is like Inglourious Basterds, Django Unchained. But when you sit down and you actually pay attention to what's going on here, it's very nostalgic and it's very deep at the same time. I mean, it's so weird that I can say like watching Brad Pitt drive on the highway back to his trailer for 5 minutes is just something that I thoroughly enjoyed. And really, that's all that Tarantino is doing in this film is he's recreating a time period back in 1969 in Hollywood of this transition of when you saw television entering the scene, actors trying to find their way in the whole movie industry. There's just a lot of great stuff in here. Some of the stuff that still sticks out in my mind, I mentioned, Brad Pitt driving home to feed his dog 2 cans of dog food while he makes mac and cheese. But everything from like the posters in his room, to the drive-in theater he's parked behind, to the ads that are playing on the TV that he has, is just, it's capturing a time period that is just long and forgotten, where that noise, that sound is just something that sticks with you. And even like the actual story itself, how it's all wrapped around, the Shannon Tate and the Charles Manson, murders. That was one thing going in. I thought, I really hope Tarantino is a bit more tasteful with this because he does do something interesting with this. And really, a lot of people said this is like the buildup to a big gag. And it kind of is, but I almost feel Tarantino, what he does in this is it's appropriate. And it's hard for me to say that, but for anyone who has not seen it, give this movie a shot. It is quite on the long end, and the ending is really the only time you'll ever really get like a big Tarantino bloodbath that you're hoping for. But it's a very entertaining movie, and kind of, Alex, in the same sense, like you've been introducing all these albums to us, it's just something you just sit there and you soak in. And I don't know, it's rewarding on that kind of an end. And yeah, I think all the actors in this just do their darndest. Leo DiCaprio, Brad Pitt, this is the first time they've ever been in a movie together. I keep forgetting that. And they work so well.
So, Rick, explain to the audience exactly what it is a stunt double does.
Actors are required to do a lot of dangerous stuff. Cliff here is meant to help carry the load.
Is that how you describe your job, Cliff?
What, carrying his load? Yeah, it's about right.
No, yeah, I think we talked about this one on the podcast too, didn't we?
We did, yeah.
Yeah, I really enjoyed this movie. And if you want to hear our further thoughts, I would direct you to our podcast episode on Once Upon a Time in Hollywood.
That we also did with Hobbs and Shaw.
That's right, we did.
We did a double feature for that because what better way to do a Tarantino review when you do it as a Grindhouse double feature?
Exactly. All right, my number 4 pick is Alita Battle Angel.
You are someone very special.
Hey, kid.
Not just a teenage girl.
Hey, what's your problem?
You can't remember.
What do you mean?
Doc found you in the scrapyard. So you must be from up there.
And I'm just an insignificant girl.
Yeah, that's what they want you to think.
So I watched this movie initially, had a blast with it. I think Rodriguez's style works fantastically for this kind of movie. I love that he worked with James Cameron with this movie. And I think that helped him out a lot because Rodriguez gets to go crazy with his over-the-top, super stylized imagery, world building. But Cameron helps him kind of chisel down the story into something relatable. I'm not always a fan of James Cameron's style of heartthrob, emotional storytelling. I think it doesn't work terribly well in stuff like Avatar or Titanic, but obviously there's an audience for that kind of stuff. But I think he helped Rodriguez bring that kind of sensibility to this sort of story, which has a lot of kick-ass action. It has a lot of kick-ass visual effects. But you care about the characters in this. I care about Alita in this movie. I'm curious where she's going. That Rosa Salazar, who plays Alita, I think she does a great job of bringing about this sort of innocence in a character who is trying to figure out who she is, but has very strong convictions at the same time. So after I watched the movie for the first time, I went back. I read pretty much all of the mangas. And then I went back to rewatch the movie, and then I got it on Blu-ray and rewatched it again. And this is another one that's fairly long. I mean, long as in it's just over 2 hours long, but it's a fun ride of a watch.
Honestly, Joe, I was going to kind of say something about this, that I think this was the biggest worry, I think, for a lot of people who were going into this movie, that this was, another attempt to try and bring anime to the West again. And, that we've seen quite a few attempts and failures at it. But there is something that you comment on where, James Cameron and Robert Rodriguez complement each other in, just the whole wackiness of the premise, but also just the tenderness of the premise as well. And both help each other let those shine through in the best way.
Yeah, and if you watch the behind the scenes making of stuff and everything that you hear about the making of this movie, it really was a true collaboration. It's not one of those things where I know that there was some drama behind the scenes of the new Terminator movie where James Cameron was involved as producer and he was working with some of the directors. And I hear that there was a lot of drama behind the scenes. He was clashing with them. There was kind of a power struggle. From what I understand, there's none of that in Alita. It was James Cameron had this vision for a movie that he wanted to make for years. Mm-hmm. Then he handed it off to Robert Rodriguez along with all his notes. And Robert Rodriguez did his damnedest to make a James Cameron movie, basically, but still with a Robert Rodriguez sensibility.
Yeah, I mean, there's all those like little trademarks that Rodriguez has had in all of his other movies that you see, like the bar scene. I also think just like the the roller derby racing slash fest is that's just pure Rodriguez right there.
Yeah, and he brings in all of the Rodriguez regulars. Jeff Fahey is in the movie. Michelle Rodriguez pops into the movie briefly. So yeah, it's definitely identifiable as his movie, but it's also identifiable as James Cameron movie. This is a beautiful collaboration. I want them to make a sequel because this is such a great little movie. Want to see more. Please, Disney, revive the Alita Battle Angel series.
Yeah, we need more of that. We need more cyborgs, slashing each other.
This movie was more violent than I thought it was going to be. So many people lose their limbs and faces.
Yeah, but they're cyborgs, so that doesn't count.
I know, but they're still people.
Are they?
Humans get like decapitated and sliced up in this movie too.
They do. So it is pretty high, yeah.
All right, Alex, what's your number 3?
All right, so number 3. So 2019 was kind of a year that I really more got into screamo as a genre. So interesting that my number 3 pick is an album titled 2020 by the band Shin Guard. So like I said, this is screamo. It's got a bit more on the heavier side than some screamo records, as it does have some like emo violence elements in it. But this was an early contender for me for album of the year. This was released back in February, and this one just immediately struck me. I remember listening to it for the first time and just kind of blown away. I think I listened to the band's collaborative album with For Your Health called Death of Spring, which is also a really solid album, and I liked that one, so I checked out their latest full length, which was this, and this one really got to me on it. It's very aggressive, it's very heavy, like I said, for a screamo album, but it doesn't go all the way into more of doesn't really go into like a metalcore or grindcore or power violence kind of tone. It definitely still falls squarely into the screamo category, but this one was really good. It's a short album, only 26 minutes, with 8 tracks, so it's real quick jaunt to get through. But it's very passionate. It's you can really hear it dripping off all of the songs. I think the best ones, in my opinion, are the opening track, Motorcade, and later on you have Kennedy. I think those are probably my favorite tracks off the album. But yeah, like I said, if you're interested in more of like the heavier side of screamo, this is an album that you can really get into and really latch onto. For a rather newer band as well. This was their second full-length album, one of their 3 if you count their split album that I mentioned earlier. So the band's still in kind of their infancy, and hopefully they stick it out. As with a lot of screamo bands, they tend to release maybe an album or 2 and then just disappear and break up. So I'm hoping these guys will stay together for a good while longer, at least to put out a couple more albums.
Yeah, I mean, if they don't scream too much, then they'll keep their voices,
Yeah, well, there was a band back in, I think it was the either late 90s or early 2000s, called Jerome's Dream, and their singer did not use a mic.
Oh, so literally he was just projecting all the time.
Yeah,
wow.
He would just scream his absolute lungs out for like shows and stuff like that. So they didn't last long, as you can probably imagine. So I mean, that's the case. That's kind of the only case where they literally just screamed too hard and the band had to break up.
That's beautiful.
What a way to go out.
Yeah.
Alrighty, Nate, what's your number 3?
All right. My number 3 is a surprise pick. And this was like in the last few days as I was trying to like catch up on like all these Netflix movies and movies I have not seen, because there's just so many. This was a random find, and I was not expecting it to be as good as it was. It is a French animated film by one of the writers of Amélie, and it is called I Lost My Body.
Oh, I've heard of this recently, and I think I need to see this.
You do. Honestly, Joe, I think you really do. Just the trailer alone might pique your interest. It's kind of weird and macabre in its premise and how it first starts out, but at the core of it, it is a boy meets girl story. This guy who is orphaned, and he finds this girl who works at a library, and we see a relationship blossom, but that's not how it starts off. Literally, if you look at the trailer, and might provide a link, we'll see, it starts off with his severed hand breaking out of a laboratory and crawling its way back to him. And that's half of the movie, is this hand coming to life and it crawling back to its owner.
It sounds amazing.
But this is so interesting, is that from the very beginning, you are invested. I was surprised how invested I was. As weird as the premise was, I was like, I should not be liking this. This should not be as good as it is. And there's just so much in there, and just a lot of just the commitment and how they use that motif of the hand, of the sensory memory of touch, and just how that is part of your identity, and how to lose that is kind of almost something that you regret and dread. And that says a lot about this kid in his relationships in life and his decisions he's made. And I don't know. I mean, for such a simple story, for such a weird premise, I was not expecting to be as good as it was, but the animation is gorgeous. It's very stark and it's bold at the same time. It's terrifying at moments as well. I mean, more than just like a hand just crawling, like, the Thing from the Addams Family. There are scenarios this hand gets involved in that you become really emotionally concerned and worried. Like, it really gets suspenseful at times. But there's elements throughout it that uses sound, that uses just noise, that just uses just very quiet moments where there's no talking at all, but it's some very powerful imagery going on. And I don't know, I'm a huge animation lover, and something like this that just popped out of nowhere and just caught me by surprise, just for everything that it was just throwing at in the story. I just thought it was genius. So it was a very, very well-received pick for me for number 3.
Yeah, this only came on my radar probably within the last week, and I already know that I need to see this movie, so I'm excited to check it out.
I'd say maybe your daughter might actually like this as well. I say give it a shot.
I'm not trusting you with that.
No, don't. That's a joke.
Alrighty, my number 3 is John Wick Chapter 3, Parabellum.
Yeah, there you go.
There we go. Now I'm getting into the stuff that everyone can agree on.
No idea what's coming.
Mr. Wick broke the rules. I trust you understand the repercussions if he survives. John Wick, excommunicado, is now in effect. You shouldn't be here. Nice suit.
Good to see you too. I need your help.
After this, we are less than even.
So this movie opens up pretty much paying off the setup of the end of John Wick Chapter 2, which is John Wick's on the run, and everybody in the world is an assassin, and they're all out to get him. And this movie is just, it opens with a bang, with him, basically on the run from every single assassin. He's running from fight scene into fight scene. And the movie never stops. It just kind of keeps barreling on through. It slows down a couple of moments, but I think you kind of need to take a breather every once in a while. Mm-hmm. But the reason I love this movie so much is because they escalate everything up to 11 with this movie. The John Wick movies have already been well-made, well-choreographed action films. Mm-hmm. And this one just goes all out. It's almost like a slapstick comedy at times, where everything becomes a weapon. Books become weapons. Horses become weapons.
Dogs become weapons.
Dogs become weapons.
They break through every single piece of glass that any building can offer.
Which is the sheer creativity of this movie. There's a fight scene early on where John Wick is in a narrow hallway with walls just lined with knives. And just human pincushions in this movie.
I know. It's at that scene. I know what scene you're talking about. I'm watching this. I'm like, okay, there's only 2 ways this can go, and neither look positive for either party. So let's see what happens.
Yeah, you already love the character John Wick from the previous 2 movies. This one just shows you how far they can take things. And on top of that, the choreography is beautifully shot. You can see everything that's going on. You can see all the hard work that went into getting these actors in shape. The characters are colorful. They're all fun. You got the sushi guys towards the end. You got some actors from the Raid are in this movie. You get to see them do their things. So there's a wide variety of styles of fighting, but there's also just a variety in what kind of things can happen in this film, and it's just wonderful. So yeah, I absolutely love John Wick Chapter 3. It is my favorite of the John Wick films. I know a lot of people have critiqued the story as just kind of like it's so relatable to have the first one where it's vengeance for his dog's death. And this one kind of gets a little bit more into the underworld and the world building of the background of all the John Wick stuff. For me, that stuff worked though. These films have always been silly, and yeah, we're delving a bit more into the silly backstory of now there's an adjudicator and there's all these different levels of bureaucracy in this crime world. But I'm okay with that.
Yeah, I guess just my thought is like they definitely do set up for another sequel after this one, and I'm almost kind of wondering how much deeper can we go with the John Wick lore? Because I don't know, this kind of went pretty far, and I'm like, how much further can we go?
It was interesting. I was talking to I think it was Chad Stileski. He was talking in an interview about this. How it's basically don't expect a satisfying ending to any of the John Wick movies. As far as he's concerned, they could cut it off at any time and he'd be perfectly happy with it, because in his mind, John Wick is damned from the first movie. There is no happy ending for John Wick. And he said that every movie is going to end with him either on the run or eventually dead, because he's killed so many people over the course of these movies.
I know.
That he basically said, like, there is no happy ending for this guy. He's killed too many people. He can't have a happy ending. So it's going to be either open endings or just a flat out death. And because this guy has no plans to continue it. I'm sure they'll keep making them, but as far as each movie, he has no overall plan of where they're going to go. It's just always, yeah, John Wick is screwed.
No, but I do agree with you. This is probably, of all 3 movies, this is the one that's just shot and choreographed at its prime. I mean, I thought the second one got like topped the first one, but this one just went even a little bit further.
Yeah, and it introduced a lot of really fun concepts. It's just, I don't know, it's a well-made, very fun action movie. All right, Alex, give us your number 2.
Number two, we're back at it again with some more atmospheric black metal.
Oh, gee, what a surprise.
Yeah, who knew? Who would have guessed? But this time, it's mixed with depressive black metal.
Oh, gee, what a surprise.
You're really selling this.
Yeah. It's the album Damp Chill of Life by None. It's a US-based depressive atmospheric black metal band. This is their third full-length album. They came across my radar last year. Yeah, Life Has Gone On Long Enough was their previous album. As I got into atmospheric black metal and kind of exploring a little bit more of black metal subgenres and whatnot, right? Depressive black metal was another one that I latched onto, as it creates just a very crushing, oppressive kind of wall of sound, just this hopeless atmosphere. Yeah, but these guys do it. These guys do it very well. Kind of with a few other bands in my list. It's still an early album for them. So, but for them to hit their second album, I haven't listened to that. I don't think I listened to their first, but for them to hit their second albums and do so well, and then to keep on and do incredibly well on their third album is really a testament to how really kind of their focus and how well they really work as a band. Because this album, while I don't think it's as good as their previous Life Has Gone On Long Enough, it's still incredibly solid. It's still a very good example of what some very chilling atmospheric depressive black metal can be. It has like some incredible, like almost staticky wall of sound, guitars. The vocals are set pretty far back, and everything just works. The ambient passages, while they can sometimes drag on for other bands, these guys make use of them really well and kind of give you a break from the, I guess, just hopelessness. Even with it being a, black metal album, it's still kind of wall of sound. It's still, atmospheric enough that I can even like put this on and fall asleep to it. It sits back kind of comfortably, and just kind of envelops you in this incredibly cold atmosphere. The album cover is really, I think, a great depiction of kind of like what you can really expect from the album itself. So I think, yeah, this is an incredible one. It was something that there's another YouTube channel that I watch, Banger TV. They do album reviews of a bunch of metal, and one of my favorite hosts, Blaine Smith, this was also his album of the year, and I couldn't agree with him. It's incredible. It's fantastic. It's something that, after you kind of really get into it and listen to it, a good few times, you can put it on the background, but it'll still captivate you and still hold you. And as bleak as it is, it's still wonderful.
I think the one thing that's still sticking out of my mind, Alex, is the fact you said you fall asleep to this.
Yeah. Not so much anymore, but yeah, I've fallen asleep to this record. Yeah, I can put it on and just have it playing in the background and fall asleep. Yeah.
All right, Nate, what's your number 2?
My number 2 is a movie that I guess as soon as it came out has kind of like carried with me throughout the year, and that is Jordan Peele's second horror thriller, Us. There's just a lot of stuff I love about Jordan Peele as like a filmmaker. The fact that, this guy that started out on Mad TV and in comedy just has kind of shown this underbelly of being a Wes Craven, like, fan of horror and thriller. And I don't know, I mean, everyone loves Get Out and for what it was doing. I think this movie takes it to the next level stylistically and just how it's shot and its premise. I think it's just a much better executed movie, in my opinion. For some reason, there's this like fantasy and this fairy tale element to it that I think for Jordan Peele lends itself really well to his style of filmmaking. It brings a little bit of just, this supernatural element to it and this bit of campiness to it and silliness to it. And I know there's a lot of people who have problems with the whole idea of like the tethered and why are they coming up and why is this happening? And there's a lot of plot holes in that. But for some reason, I bought into it because this is such an interesting orchestrated movie. And at the very end, the reveal and what happens. In Lupita Nyong'o's performance in this is stellar as well. The fact she's playing two people and two different versions of herself. One being like this mother who is fighting for her life to save her family, and this other one who is just the creepiest, like distraught and this gargling voice.
Once upon a time, there was a girl, and the girl had a shadow. The two were connected, tethered together.
For me, overall, it was just, I liked what this movie was. I like what it was tackling. And I've seen a lot of films doing this where they're doing this whole class struggle and social commentary about that. I mean, we've seen a lot of those this year, but this one was the first one I saw do that. And it's the one that I thought did it in such a subtle way. And it stuck with me. And there's just a lot of stuff at play in it. And performances are great. The suspense is great. The lighting is fantastic. And I don't know. This was just one that was one of my favorites from the beginning of this year.
Yeah, I'll say I'm so close to loving this movie. I remember when it opened up, I thought this is going to be one of my favorite horror movies of all time. And I still think it's a great movie. It's just, I've got too many issues with it here and there, logical issues, that kind of stuff. Some of the stuff you brought up before is just kind of deal breakers for me, but I think it is a very well made movie, and it's got a lot of great things going forward for it.
And I think that's like I said, a lot of people who are polarized on this movie kind of do agree. Yeah, there's plot holes and there's problems with it, but I think for me, the fact that I kind of started off with this very fairy tale kind of like almost fable-ish kind of a setting makes me just embrace that a little bit more. I don't know. I kind of forgive it in a way. And for me, I find the movie a lot more enjoyable, especially the ending climax. I just love that scene so damn much.
Fair enough. All right, my number 2 is one that you guys have talked about on the podcast, but I was not there for that episode, actually. Which is Jojo Rabbit by Taika Waititi.
Poor Jojo. What's wrong, little man?
Hi, Adolf.
Want to tell me about that rabbit incident? What was all that about?
They wanted me to kill it. I'm sorry. I couldn't.
Don't worry about it. I couldn't care less.
But now they call me a scared rabbit.
Let them say whatever they want. People used to say a lot of nasty things about me. Oh, this guy's a lunatic. Oh, look at that psycho. He's gonna get us all killed.
Okay, so I didn't actually listen to your guys' episode.
I'm glad you did. No, I'm kind of glad you did. I wanted you to kind of go in with fresh ears and eyes for this. So.
I wanted to go into it being as unspoiled as possible, knowing the premise, but also just I was lazy and didn't listen to it after I watched the episode. I watched the movie either. But from what I can understand, Nate, I think you love this movie, and Alex, you think it's okay?
Yeah, I enjoyed it, but to a certain extent.
Right.
Yeah, and I did love this. It didn't make it to my top 10 for reasons, but there's just a lot of great stuff in this. I think you'll probably comment on this. It's funny, it's tender, it doesn't shy away from the horrors of the war, but it does in a way that is not traumatic.
This movie, for a bit of time, it was number 1 it was my number 1 movie, and it's kind of gone back and forth with the movie that will end up being my number 1, which we'll get to. But it's just, it reminds me a lot of Life is Beautiful, the Roberto Benigni film, where it's funny as all hell. Like, I was laughing my ass off throughout this movie. But it is a very real movie. These characters are very real characters. You feel that they have actual emotions, and you can understand where they're coming from and how their worldviews have been warped or molded by their past. Like these characters have a very rich history, and they feel like real people. But they're popped into one of just Taika Waititi's wonderful, absurd sense of humor. Whenever he pops up as Hitler in this movie, I just can't help laughing. Actually, this movie was funny to watch because we saw it it wasn't like a crowded theater, but there were a good number of people in the movie. And me and the group I was with, it was like me and 2 other people. We were laughing throughout the movie, and everyone else was just like dead silent, like they're like offended at the movie.
I love that, because a lot of people have kind of come out of this movie with that exact kind of reaction, where you're either going to get the jokes and you're not going to be afraid to laugh at the Nazis and Hitler that Waititi is doing, or you are going to be offended. But I kind of agree with you, Joe. There's just something on how this material is handled. It's quite enjoyable, and you're not going to get so like bogged down. And in fact, I think the fact that this is all told from the perspective of a kid is just what brings out that humor a little bit more, because there's this innocence like that's preserved throughout it, and it never gets too dark or like scandalizing. And I don't know. I think that's just what makes it so enjoyable as well.
I just want to comment on the fact that Sam Rockwell,
yes,
he has made a career out of playing the abhorrent, horrible character who does a nice thing in movies.
It's his trademark now. He's realized that secures him enough for an Oscar.
Yeah, between this and 3 Billboards Outside Ebbing, Missouri, I feel like he has cornered the market on terrible people who do nice things every once in a while in movies.
I mean, honestly, if you kind of look at this movie through a different glass and actually go into what Waititi was like he's done for each character, there's a lot that's not being told on these characters' backstory, but you kind of get what's going on screen. There's backstory there that we never ever get to see, but when it comes through, it does shine through.
Yeah, exactly. It's a hilarious movie, but it's full of cartoon characters, and it's got some real raw emotion and pain within the goofs, within the jokes, within everything. So yeah, very authentic movie, very funny movie. I love Jojo Rabbit. I can't wait to get it on Blu-ray so I can watch it over and over again.
Awesome. All right, that leads to our number one, right?
Yep. Here we go.
Before we do that, is there any honorable mentions that didn't make our lists we want to just kind of shout out right now?
Oh, yes. I've got a few. Alex, do you have any honorable mentions you want to highlight?
Sure. Yeah, I can throw in a couple. As kind of indicative of the top 10, a lot of metal. So a lot of, albums by Grima, Seer, Liturgy. We got a new Pup album this year, which was really good. One of my favorite screamo bands and its name was Epion, released a new EP, and I think it's fantastic. Interestingly enough, too, is they share a drummer with Anamanaguchi, which is interesting because screamo is a completely different style than what they play, but the drumming is incredible on both EPs here. So that would be my honorable mentions there.
Cool. Awesome. Nate?
Let's see. Some movies that I really enjoyed didn't make the list. One of them, actually two of them being on your list, Joe, Jojo Rabbit, Alita, Battle Angel. I liked Rocket Man, the biopic fantasy of Elton John's life. Klaus, which is an animated film produced by Netflix talking about the origins of Santa Claus. That was enjoyable. And Pokemon Detective Pikachu. I mean, anytime you have Ryan Reynolds voicing a Pokemon character with a funny little hat, you're going to get my vote.
I'll just go ahead and quickly list my 11 through 20 as my honorable mentions.
Oh my gosh. Just pick 5, man.
All right. Here we go. 11, Dolomite Is My Name. 12, The Lady and the Tramp live action remake. 13, El Camino. 14, The Lighthouse. 15, Master Z-Man Legacy. 16 is Spider-Man Far From Home. 17 is Detective Pikachu. 18 is Annabelle Comes Home. 19, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. And number 20 is Toy Story 4. Boom. Did it.
You did it. All right.
All right. So here we go. Number 1. Alex, what is your number 1 album of 2019?
All right. So number 1 album. This was a band that I only discovered this year, but I was immediately sold. It's the album Clairvoyant by State Fault. These guys are a Santa Rosa, California based screamo band, but I had first listened to their previous album. They don't break the mold of what screamo does. They incorporate elements of post-rock, which is par the course for a lot of screamo bands, but they just do it so damn well. One thing that's cool about the band too is with screamo being, kind of the more aggressive and harsher offshoot of, emo and, a little bit of hardcore punk, it can be a little bit harder to get into. But I think these guys provide a couple really good entry albums, and not to kind of demean the albums and saying that they're only good if you're just starting into the genre and wait till you get to the actual good albums. These are incredible albums. Both their previous, but particularly their most recent. There's a ton of melody, so it's easier to listen to, but it doesn't shy away from being incredibly hard-hitting and, at times aggressive and kind of chaotic. Certain tracks are, kind of go all out, but it's still rooted firmly in screamo, and the lyrics are incredibly great. There's a lot of, not something you find too often, I guess, in screamo. There's some good anthems on the album, stuff that you can kind of, sing along to as you're, driving in the car or whatever. But for these guys come out with such a strong album is incredible. Again, when I was talking about Shin Guard, and how a lot of screamo bands don't last very long, this one in particular is one I hope just stays on for years to come, because just what they've put out so far is mind-blowing. It's so passionate. Going back to, I've been talking about this throughout the entire list, but The atmosphere it does create is really incredible, especially with the inclusion of a lot of the post rock elements that they bring into the mix. It kind of breaks up the song structures a little bit, kind of adds a little bit more interludes, although that's not entirely the right word to use for it, but it offers you maybe a little bit of a break from the energy that the kind of vocals can really bring in. So yeah, this is an incredible album, and it's one that pretty much upon hearing it, I was kind of sold as this being my album of the year. In a year where we didn't have, for me at least, I didn't have a whole lot of albums that were really vying for the number one spot. This album by State Faults, but going back and listening to each one, this one was really just the kind of clear winner. So yeah, for this album to come out and just immediately grab hold of me in the way that the band structures their songs and the lyrics and the vocals are amazing, incredible. Yeah, this was an incredible one. This one made it onto even with the short amount of time that I've been listening to it, this one made it onto my top 50 of the decade.
Wow,
it was that good.
Damn, look at that.
You have almost convinced me to listen to a genre of music that I think I've never showed very much interest in. just with this pitch, Alex.
Just with this pitch.
Awesome.
I mean, the fact that it said like this was a one-time listen in your soul, that's a high recommendation, man.
Yeah, like I said, it's just it just worked for me. Like, it was exactly what I wanted. It didn't have too much post rock. It didn't have too little post rock. It wasn't completely devoid of melody and hooks that I can get into, but it also wasn't too light. It was still heavy as all hell, but not to the point where it was relentless to get to try to get through. And it's not a terribly long album. I mean, 36 minutes. That's not long at all. Spanned across 11 tracks. It's with the longest ranging from the opening track being 6 minutes 49 seconds, and the shortest track being only 54 seconds. That track is a hell of a 54 seconds though. I'm really big on opening tracks, kind of like hooking you into and really selling you on the album, and that's absolutely what this opening track does. It's called Dreamcatcher Part 2. And with it being the longest track on the record, you do get a full sense of kind of what to expect. Absolutely album of the year for me.
Awesome. Or the decade, as you mentioned, one of the top of the decade.
Oh yeah. One of the top.
You gotta keep that standard, that pedestal up high. So.
Oh yeah. It's a little. I think it's kind of in the back half of the 50, but that it's going up against a lot of other stuff. So for it to be able to make that much of an impact in the few months that I've been listening to it, really should kind of speaks volumes on how good it is.
Cool. Excellent.
All righty. Well, following up on that, Nate, what have you got for us for your number one movie of all time, or of the
not of all time, of just this year?
Of the year 2019.
Well, this is one that you've already covered. It was your number 10, and it is my number 1. It is Bong Joon-ho's Parasite. This was a movie, like as you mentioned, and as you were covering this movie, you kind of went in blind, not knowing anything about this. I was in the same case. I just heard a lot of people talking about this. I said, you know what? I'm going to buy a ticket and just go see this for myself. I never enjoyed a movie so much this year as I did with this one. It is a black comedy. It is a satire. It is a horror thriller. It is a home invasion movie. It is a social drama. It is a good, just Korean film in general. It just has so much in it, and it's just done so well. There's a lot of Hitchcockian suspense moments in here that I think just work really well with the house setting. But I think just one thing I just found very refreshing about this is that it takes a subject material that I think a lot of people in South Korea experience, which is going back to this whole class struggle and just that kind of just division that you see, and just see all of that at play in this, and just do it in a way that it's not so hard hitting. It just lets you experience with these characters, and you see all these elements at play. And it just, there's that moment in the second act when something is revealed, and it just becomes something completely different. And I don't know, for me, this was a very just entertaining watch. And you're just feeling a bunch of emotions all at the same time. You're scared, you're laughing, you're kind of hoping they got to get away with this, even though what they're doing is just despicable. And at the very end, you've kind of just been through this experience. And overall, it just gets to this idea that they all want to achieve this dream of living a better life. What kind of plans are they willing to set in action, and what is it going to cost them? That I think just the way it just like wraps up in its climax is just one you don't see coming. And it kind of leaves you a little emotionally tugged. Like I kind of felt really sad for just like what happens or how everything kind of planned out, but I couldn't expect anything better or less. And Bong Joon-ho, he has this, he's worked on movies like Snowpiercer and The Host, but he has this like sensibility of Western style storytelling, but he also brings his like Korean filmmaking roots as well. And there's this perfect marriage that's just going on. And I can't describe it except that if anyone has not seen this movie yet, please give it a shot. It's just a wonderful, thrilling ride from beginning to end. There's just some funny moments as well in this, and some ballsy moments as well. There's a part where they're poking fun at Kim Jong-un. And when you think about, okay, this movie was made in Korea, that's a pretty ballsy statement to make. So this movie just throws a lot of punches. It knows what it is. It is not apologetic for what it is. And I think it's just my favorite movie of the year.
Alrighty, so my number one movie of 2019, this was the one that was fighting with Jojo Rabbit, eventually overtook Jojo Rabbit, is Dragged Across Concrete, directed by S. Craig Zahler. Nate, have you seen this movie?
No, but I remember you talking about this, and I'm not surprised.
Of course you aren't. I love this movie. This movie is like 3 hours long, and it's long, it's slow, it takes its time, and I sat through it twice, and I will gladly sit through it again. This is a hangout movie with two kind of just despicable characters.
Oh my gosh, I just think it's wonderful. It's one of them is Mel Gibson.
Oh my god, Mel Gibson and Vince Vaughn. Like I could watch Vince Vaughn just eat an egg salad sandwich all day after this movie, and you kind of do in this movie.
A single red ant could have eaten it faster.
You're losing perspective and compassion. There's a reason I'm sitting behind this desk running things, and you're out there with a partner that's 20 years younger than you.
Hey, Anthony's got a mouth with his own engine, but he's solid.
I'm thinking about the kind of future I can offer my girlfriend.
Pops is a yesterday who ain't worth words.
Good heavens and praise be to him. Your absence was a weight upon us.
Thank you, Mr. Edmonton.
I don't like doing things with so many question marks everywhere.
S. Craig Zahler is the director of Bone Tomahawk and Brawl in Cell Block 99. He is quickly becoming one of my favorite modern day directors.
For reasons I guess we're all beginning to understand. It just has that wonderful balance of just violent humor. And
well, he writes books too. I haven't read any of his books, but his filmmaking style reminds me of just kind of a pulp novel writer. And his movies flow like books, where you can take long bits of time in between where the characters just kind of hang out and do their own thing, but then it's punctuated by bits of just horrific, over-the-top violence, and it's very pulpy, and it's got this kind of grimy element to it, but the characters are just so raw and they're real, and they might be scumbags, but you get that they come out, you understand the world that they're coming out of and what they're going through, and it's very enrapturing. Most of his films are Bone Tomahawk and Brawl in Cell Block 99. I mean, they're certainly entertaining in a what the hell are they doing in this movie kind of a way. How did they get away with that? And I love that like this is just his pure, unadulterated vision he's able to get onto the screen. Now, Dragged Across Concrete, I want to say less pulpy than the other two in that he doesn't go for the exploitation angle as much as he's just trying to make his own dirty buddy cop movie. It's sprawling. Again, you get long periods of time where characters just kind of sit in a car watching an apartment, but it's something about it is just enrapturing, and I could sit with these guys all day just watching them watch this apartment. Then you got crazy stuff like bank robbers with talking through voice modulators, and it's all super stylized, and it's incredibly tense and just kind of grimy and dirty, and you're dragged through this world of just scumbags on both sides,
I mean, honestly, one thing I was going to also mention, Joe, there's some films I didn't have a chance to see, like one of them being Uncut Gems, and I haven't finished The Irishman because I can't sit for 3.5 hours. But one thing I'm noticing that Hollywood's kind of embracing a lot more is just like this kind of just low-life scumbag characters, and them not being very apologetic for what they've done or not having that much of a redemption factor. But we're just kind of following them through, and in a way, it's entertaining just to watch these characters just do what they do.
Well, yeah, that's the thing about these movies, and Director Across Concrete especially. I've seen a lot of people criticizing the movie for being it's like just an alt-right fantasy. You have Mel Gibson playing a racist cop, and he's the hero of the movie. I'm like, that's not really the point of the movie. These characters aren't portrayed as heroes; they're portrayed as characters. They're the ones that you follow, but it's kind of like there are consequences for what characters do in this movie, and they're allowed to every character in this movie is given a platform to voice their opinions, no matter how controversial they are, and they're put up against characters who have differing controversial opinions, and you see them go up against each other, and it's just kind of like it lets these people be people in this world, and some of them are pretty terrible people.
Yeah, it's not the it's not the Hollywood style drawn out characters where it's like, yeah, we're going to see them redeem themselves at the end. No, you're going to see them kind of go down this path, despite how disgusting or vile it is.
Yeah, exactly. It lets the actors raw and real, and I think that's uncomfortable a lot of the time. And there's a lot of uncomfortable things in this movie.
I can imagine.
I bet.
Yeah, it sticks to its guns and just plays out in just a very well done way. These movies are well shot. They're extraordinarily well written. And when I say it's written, when I say it's made like a novel, it's kind of like at one point you follow like the movie pauses just to follow a side character who's basically only serves a function for one scene in the movie, but you follow her for several scenes prior to that. Like you follow her for like 15-20 minutes, and this is a side character who doesn't matter to the actual plot, but it's because the scene that she comes in, all of a sudden the stakes are that much higher because you care about this character, you get where she's coming from, and you don't know what's going to happen. In a novel, you can do that. You can start a chapter with a brand new character, follow them for a chapter, and get to the scene where they serve their purpose. Movies don't do that. Movies follow the main characters. So you don't just suddenly introduce another character halfway through and then just ditch them to keep on with the main characters after that, and I like that we have a movie that can do that.
Wow. Okay. So you're number one, Dragged Across Concrete.
Yeah, absolutely. I love this movie, and I could watch this movie all day.
Oh, we applaud you for that. Like I said, I'll definitely. I've yet to watch this guy's filmography, but I know his films have popped up several times in our podcasts and in your reviews. So,
Nate, you have to triple feature these movies. I want to see your reaction.
I guess that I do owe you that. So, okay, for you, Joe, I will do that.
When you watch Bone Tomahawk, I need to hear your reaction to that movie. All right, so that concludes our very lengthy special top 10 movies and albums of 2019. Alex, where can people find you?
All right, well, if you wanted to look over the rest of the, my top 20 albums of the year, as well as a couple honorable mentions I didn't bring up, you can find me on rateyourmusic.com under the name Half Scrim. I also just finalized and put out my list for my top 50 albums of the decade. So you can scroll through that, and I'll give you a spoiler. It's a lot less metal than what's been on my top albums for this year. You can check me out there. I'm also on Letterboxd, also under the name Half Scrim, I believe. That's how that works there. But I'm finalizing and working on my top movies of the decade. So I'll hopefully have that out sometime soon here.
Man, I guess, Joe, you and I should follow suit. We should make our top 50 movies of the past decade.
I could throw that together. That wouldn't be too difficult. Nate, where can people find you?
Well, you can find me here at Film Illiterates, doing the podcasts and videos with these guys. You can also follow me on Instagram at Nathan_Stoner_films. I'm also going to kind of be venturing off and doing some new content this year. So once I kind of have some stuff ready to show, I might have my own website and I can direct you guys to that. But in the meantime, I'm stuck here and entertaining you all.
You can find me also at Letterboxd at film_illiterate. You can also find me on Twitter at Film Illiterates. And of course, you can find all of our podcast episodes and videos on filmilliterates.com or youtube.com/filmilliterates. That concludes our big old hunk of episodes. And we keep watching movies and keep it easy.